Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about how you can stretch or perform what we call range of motion for your affected arm or your weaker arm after the stroke. Now, today I'm going to have you sit at a table. It's important. This is probably the most important aspect of what I'm going to show you today because the table is going to allow you to support that weaker arm. A lot of times in some of the handouts and even some videos I've seen on YouTube, people are standing to stretch their affected arm and things like that. And if you're someone, and you're going to have to make this kind of distinction for yourself, if you're someone whose weaker arm after the stroke is weak to the point where you're not able to lift your arm to shoulder height, which would look like this. So when you try to lift your arm, if it kind of looks like this or like this, anything like that, you're going to want to do this exercise or these stretches at a table, a supported surface, okay? If you have or when you have weakness in the shoulder joint after a stroke, and I mean weakness to the point where maybe you don't have any movement in the arm yet, or you have some movement, but the strength that you have coming back in that arm still isn't to a point where it's strong enough to actually lift the weight of your arm, because our limbs are heavy, right? So if you fall in any of those camps, this is going to be a good method of stretching and exercising that weaker arm, right? So if you can, and I know you're at home, right? So find whether it's a desk or a kitchen table, dining table, side table, something that's going to be at least high enough where when you're sitting upright, you've got support under the elbow. The elbow is critical because if your elbow is supported, then your shoulder's supported, right? Many of you probably already heard about the term, it's called subluxation. It happens in the shoulder. It can happen in the shoulder after a stroke when there is significant weakness for a prolonged period of time. And all that means is, normally the muscles in the shoulder, their job is to kind of hold and create stability in this joint. But when those muscles are weakened after a stroke, and that arm is allowed to hang. So if we're not really great about always keeping that elbow supported or positioned, what you're going to see is that this bone here called the humerus, it's going to slowly start to kind of dislocate or kind of come out of position. And that can be a really painful condition to have. And it's not something you want to add to the mix when you're already dealing with trying to build strength and recovery after stroke. Okay, so find a nice supported surface to sit at. And the only other thing you're going to need is obviously something comfortable to sit in. If you're in your wheelchair, that's fine. You just need to be sitting upright and supported. And then grab you a little hand towel, even a washcloth or face cloth, that will work too. If you have really long arms, I have really long arms, or if you have a little bit less movement in your arm, you may want a longer towel. That way you've got more support or not support, but your arm will glide and move a little bit easier along the surface of your table, right? So you've got options, and there'll be some trial and error to this. But let's get started. So the first exercise I'm going to show you, it's kind of a combination one, right? So we're working right now, our focus is mostly on stretching that arm. Sometimes after a stroke, you can get what we call tightness, tone, or sometimes even spasticity in your arm. Typically, it means your arm is wanting to turn in and curl up, right? In this flex position. So stretching is going to be really critical to trying to maintain that your joints, right? And not let things get contracted and locked into these really tight positions. So let's start with the first exercise. Like I mentioned, is going to be a combination exercise. So this first one is going to work on what we call shoulder flexion, or just raising the arm up, which would normally look like this, right? And then also elbow extension, or straightening the arm, right? So I know after a stroke, when you're weak, you're not going to be able to do it in that way. So that's where our table and our towel come in. So put your affected arm, your weaker arm, first flat on the towel. Then your strong arm is going to be your mover. It's going to help assist your weaker arm through all these different movements. So your weaker arm is down on the towel. Your stronger arm is going to pancake right on top. And then all I want you to do is gently glide your arm forward and just go as far as you can without pain. When you get to that first point of feeling any kind of resistance, that's where you want to hold the stretch, right? So hold it anywhere from 30, 60 to a minute and a half. Kind of play around with what you can tolerate. And you're going to do multiple repetitions of that. And then gently slide the arm back, okay? And again, you're going to slide the arm forward, nice and easy. Go as far as you can to that point of resistance or until you feel that nice stretch feeling, right? And hold it. Now, when you're stretching is just that stretching. It should not be, or you should not be feeling any kind of sharp pain. If you feel pain, then you need to back off that movement and make some adjustments, okay? Now, as you come forward at the end range of this stretch, I'm going to show you what this looks like because some people are like, how is this really stretching my arm up? So you see how I've got my arm as far as I can tolerate here? If I hold this position, I'm going to just come off the table and sit up. Now, do you see how high my shoulder is, right? So again, this is a nice way to get some stretch in that shoulder, but allowing you to do it in a way that's not going to make any kind of subluxation worse in the shoulder and also give you a method of doing this independently, right? So add this to your routine if you haven't already. So that's the first stretch, right? We had our arm on the towel. We gently slid forward. Hold at that stretch for anywhere from 30 seconds to 90 seconds if you can, and then come back. I encourage multiple repetitions, at least 5, but you can go up to 10. Again, if you have a lot of tightness, you're going to want to kind of dig into these stretches a little bit more and really give your muscle tissues time to kind of elongate and get into those good stretches. Okay, so that's the first one. The next one I'm going to show you is gently, still your arm is on the table. You're going to bring your arm in and then you're going to bring your arm out. This is just a gentle rotation. Even with subluxation, this shouldn't irritate anything. Now, what you want to avoid with subluxation is any extreme external rotation where your shoulder is rotated out or coming up and out, right? So working in this position and these planes of movement are nice and gentle and supportive for the shoulder. So just keep it very simple, right? And just coming right back to this neutral position. A lot of times when we're sitting a lot and definitely when we're sleeping, our arms tend to be, our affected arm tends to be more internally rotated, so meaning close into your body. And so your arm doesn't get a lot of opportunities to be opened up into these more neutral positions. So again, stretching is critical and also positioning your arm appropriately throughout the day is critical, meaning don't hang out in a sling all day. Don't keep your arm on your chest and stomach while you're sleeping if you can avoid it. Try to position with pillows to keep things more neutral. Okay? So again, we came in and out, right? In, and if you feel a stretch, hold it and out. The biggest stretch would probably be as you're coming out into that externally rotated position. All right, so far we've already worked on shoulder flexion, so the front of the shoulder, that deltoid, and then we've also worked a little bit on the tricep, so getting that arm extended as you were reaching forward, okay? As you move down the arm, the next one is the elbow. Now, we talked about having a lot of tone or tightness. The tightness tends to be coming in. So like I said, in that flex position. So you're really going to want to work on getting that arm extended. So when I do elbow extension or straightening the arm, I really want to also try to incorporate getting the palm up and the wrist neutral. Does that make sense? So think just palm up and arm extended, and then you're going to want to hold that position. If you can gently come to the edge of the table, keep the towel under your arm so your elbow has some support. You can sometimes get a little bit more of a stretch, and as you get that arm, your elbow straightened, give a gentle pull into what we call wrist extension, so bringing the wrist back. Okay, so you're using your other hand to help get you into that position, and go by feel. Everyone's body is so different. So you're going to have to just kind of go gauge by what your joints and muscle tissues are going to allow you to do. Okay, so that's another good one. So again, palm up. You had here, this is pretty much already where the tightness is, right? So for some of you, it may just look like this, and that might be as far as you can go. Can you see that? That's okay. Having your elbow supported is going to risk all this excessive kind of torque on your shoulder, because if you're standing and you've got that hard infill, that like that tone is, that tightness is locking you in right here, and if that arm is not supported and you're trying to stretch it, watch what happens to my shoulder. You end up doing this, right? It's just not a good position to be in. You don't want to cause any undue stress or tension on your shoulder as you're working on these other joints. So that's why, again, I'm really a big advocate for stretching and working with your affected arm on a supported surface like a table, and have a little support and cushion from a towel. So again, if your arm, if you have a lot of tone or tightness to the point where you don't have, your arm is not able to easily fully extend, you're going to just guide your arm to whatever your muscles are going to let you do in that moment. So you go as far as you can, hold it there, and then count out your stretch or use your timer or whatever you want to do. Just go by how you feel. 30 seconds to 90 seconds if you can. And again, if you don't have a ton of pain, try to get some wrist extension as well as you're extending that elbow, and just hold, hold, hold. Okay? All right? So again, sometimes your muscles are wanting to pull you in and up, right? Some people we take for granted. It may be hard to have your palm up, right? If you try to turn your palm up and you're kind of stuck here in the middle or less than that, you can't get fully rotated where your palm is up, then that's another important stretch that you're going to want to incorporate. Keep your forearm and elbow in contact with the towel and the table. You go get your hand as far as it can, and just like with the other stretches, you're going to hold, apply pressure, find that, what I call that end range, that point of tension where it's like, up, that's it. Okay, that's where you want to hold it. Or you get to that point and you're going to ease back a little bit, right? And then hold it 30 to 90 seconds if you can. Okay, again, this is only if you have that kind of tightness. Not everybody does, right? Some of you who maybe don't have a ton of movement happening right now in that arm, things might be pretty flaccid, and maybe you don't have a lot of tone. That's fine. You still are going to want to work through these range of motions, because everything is about, at this point, you want to maintain all the available range of motion in all of your joints as you can, because you don't know what's coming down the line. You may start to get some more movement, and you don't want to be in a situation where you start getting movement back, and then now you're tight and you've got all these funky contractures and things like that, because lack of range of motion is also going to limit your mobility. Okay, so beyond that, we can now focus just on the wrist. Right now, I did mention when you're doing your elbow extension, especially if you're having a lot of tone, I showed you how when you're bringing your elbow down, you could also get some wrist extension in there as well, right? Excellent thing to do. If you want to just do the wrist and purely on its own, you're going to bring your hand flat on the table, just like this, and then take your other hand and then gently, can you guys see this? Gently bring the wrist back. Okay, and again, with all these stretches, go by how it feels and hold it for anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds, whatever you can tolerate, right? And then as you bring the wrist in, you're going to take the fingers with it. This is a nice little tip. So as you bring the wrist in towards your forearm, get those fingers straight if you can, and apply pressure here. And this stretch you should feel right along the back of the wrist, okay? And that's really it. When you bring the wrist back, some people like to keep the fingers curled. And then as you come in with the wrist, allow the fingers to straighten, okay? You do want to try to preserve what we call this natural tenodesis pattern. So when you bring the wrist back, the fingers naturally will curl. And when the wrist relaxes and comes down, the fingers straighten. So you want to try to maintain those natural movement patterns in your stretching routine as well. Hopefully that made sense. So I'm bringing the wrist down, and if you can see, as my wrist is coming down, I'm applying pressure with the fingers as well, okay? And then thumb, try to do this in palm up if you can. If not, palm down is fine. But you really are just trying to bring the thumb out. A lot of times if you've got tone, the hand is wanting to stay closed, the thumb is in, something kind of like this. So anytime you can get the fingers out of the way and do the best you can, right? I know I've seen this a lot of times. People, we take for granted. We say, oh, just open your hand. Obviously, if your muscles aren't working, you can't actively open your hand, right? But if you don't have a lot of tone, we can easily do just what I did just there, right? Right there. So that's not an issue. But if you do have a lot of tone, it's like you're prying open, right? You got to get that thumb isolated and get those fingers out of the way, right? And then try to get that thumb out, okay? If you need to create some space, make yourself a simple towel roll, something. Kind of get it wedged in there to kind of give you some space, get those fingers out of the way, and then give that thumb some love and attention. And you just want to bring it out and then bring it back in toward like you're making a number 4. So you can stretch this back side of the thumb and just gently bring it out and then bring it in across your palm, press down, and again, you should feel a stretch back here. But the biggest stretch, the most important one, is bringing it up and out, right? Go ahead and hitchhike with that thumb and bring it out, okay? I hope that made sense. I know that a lot of times, and I use them too, if you're fortunate enough to have gone to some kind of inpatient rehab or skilled rehab, almost always before you go home, the therapists were giving you handouts, home exercise programs and things like that. And there are a lot of just basic standard handouts out there that are fine. You may have seen the one where they're teaching you to, interlace your fingers and raise your arm up. But again, for your shoulder's sake, I recommend that you do this at a supported surface. Because again, if you don't have full strength in this shoulder, or your shoulder is already subluxed or starting to have that subluxation, pulling your arm up without support is not going to be good for your shoulder, right? And it will end up looking kind of like this, and this is just hanging. It's no good. So try to apply some of these principles and use your judgment and tweak whatever handouts and exercises that you may already be doing. Just tweak them the best you can, okay? So again, I hope this was helpful. Give this a try. If you don't already have a daily range of motion routine, definitely start incorporating this. Again, it does not matter if you currently at this point have no movement in your arm. Everything I showed you, I want you to still do that. And if you're starting to get some movement back, right, you can maybe do a little bit of this, a little bit of this, but you don't have full range or full strength back, you're going to want to do your exercises supported like this on a table surface, okay? And again, remember, if you can't do at least this, so get that arm in that Superman position without it looking like you're like this, all funky, then this is what you need to do, okay? It's amazing if you've got movement coming back, because I'm telling you, if you work these muscles in these ways, in this way now, you're going to be in a much better position as your recovery continues, so that you can then start challenging and strengthening in a whole different way, okay? But we got to start where we are. All right, I hope this was helpful. Leave me a comment if you have any questions, or if you're struggling with anything else specifically, and I will help you if I can. All right, see y'all next time. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more DIY videos to help you along the way in your stroke recovery. Struggling at home? Have a question? Leave me a comment. I'm here to help.